we'll have Nick from PCS.
Good afternoon, everybody. Firstly, a bit about who I am. I'm the head of campaigns and communications at PCS, and I'm also on the steering committee for the People's Assembly. So I say a few things about PCS and also a few things about how that works with the People's Assembly and how it all links in. And obviously our task today is to talk about trade unions who struggle defending workers, their rights, pay and conditions, organising our communities, which is a bit of a mouthful. But what I really want to concentrate on is how we win, because I think that is the critical question that's facing us at the moment. And I think it's fair to say that when the financial crisis hit, the right adapted and the left are still playing catch-up. They have adapted their way of operating. For them, this is stages on the Tea Party journey. They are going towards a smaller state, lower taxes, and they're using whatever opportunities they can to deliver that. Our response, as a left, as a trade union movement, so far, I think has been, as I say, playing catch-up, to an extent being divided, and our attacks on austerity have been not anywhere as clear as the attacks that the right have put on the state and on taxation and the general principles there. So, as I say, the question is how we can win. A very brief count through where we are in terms of PCS. Facing 20% job cuts, already 70,000 job cuts in civil service. Civil service about 500,000, so a huge chunk by the time this government gets through, if they get their way, 20% job cuts. Everybody in the public sector knows a pay freeze, 4 years so far, planned for 6. Pension cuts, contribution increases, privatisation across government and speeding up. And I think we're entering the slash and burn period of this government, where they will be privatising everything they can. Cuts to terms and conditions. And finally, but probably as significant as the others, attacks on trade unions and their organisation, and particularly in PCS, in the civil service, we've seen direct attacks by government departments on the level of facility time people have had, and even ultimately, recently, Eric Pickles, who attacked the very basis of union finances in his department, Department of Constitutional Affairs, Department of Communities and Local Government. What he did was he wrote us and ended the process, a decades-long process of employers collecting union subscriptions, gave us 6 weeks' notice, and said he was just going to end it, which for us, as a union with 250,000 members, it was a relatively modest number, but you could see where he's headed. Political direction that he wants to do is absolutely smash the union in his department. Happily, we're able to challenge that legally, and we won the case. Cost Eric Pickles £90,000 for his vanity project to try to get rid of us in his political campaign, so we retained that. However, it just shows the scale at which the right-wing elements are prepared to go to undermine trade union organisation. So, where are we really? Well, unions, I think, have a choice, and the choice is a passive choice, which, as to quote a senior trade unionist, batten down the hatches and wait for the Labour government, or we fight to recognise that our members are our strength and we mobilise them. PCS's choice, and a number of unions, is the latter one, and you know, I don't think anybody really recognises when we hear rhetoric of the Labour Party that they're accepting austerity, possibly austerity light, but certainly not a situation where we can go into that with any expectation they're going to reverse the damaging policies that we're seeing at the moment. So we have that choice. So what is our solution? Well, in PCS, as many people will know, we have been involved in a sort of protracted struggle which has involved various different sort of strikes and campaigns over the last period. The most recent example was yesterday. We had members on strike in a fairly unfashionable area of government, which is payroll in one of the parts of government, and there's about 1,000 people being privatised to a company called Steria, who've already said in the bid that they have made that they will offshore some of the work that is being done. They have no choice, because all the bidders are put in that, because the cost envelope the government has to them will ensure that some of that work has to be offshore. It can't be done within a sort of UK wages environment. So we're facing that. Our members were on strike there yesterday, and we were protesting outside Nick Clegg's office because some of the members are actually in Nick Clegg's constituency, and so we're doing as much political pressure as we can to try and stop that. They have absolutely rushed this through. It's going through on the 1st of November, the privatisation, giving us no time to negotiate and trying to sideline us completely. As a consequence of our actions yesterday, and the strike was very well supported by our members, in those about 6 locations around the country. We're back around the negotiating table. We've named another day's strike for the 31st of October, and we hope within that time we'll be able to get something. Once the privatisation takes place, lots of our leverage goes. It becomes a difficult situation. So, we're doing everything we can, and that's been our approach to try and deal with as many of these issues head on. And we've won on. You need to deal with these things fearlessly. I think one of the things that people know about most at PCS did was the Home Office strike during the Olympics, in the run-up to the Olympics. I think what we were suggesting, what we were doing there, was we were demonstrating we had some leverage. We had some leverage and we had to use it. We were fairly unpopular with some sections of the media. It's fair to say we weren't unpopular with our members and we weren't unpopular within PCS because they recognised what we were trying to do in the environment we're in was trying to win. And in those circumstances, the Home Office firstly created thousands of jobs as a result of that, and secondly, have given our members a pay increase, which is the only pay increase we've managed to negotiate, which is outside the remit of the pay freeze. So actually that had a huge effect as well. So we've had some wins, we've had some small wins. I think we all accept we haven't won on the big issues of austerity. And so what do we need to do to try and do that? Well, I think we need to mobilise millions of people. That's where we are. We need to do, if you think about how people are mobilised, they're mobilised because they have hope. So part of the small wins is part of the process of giving people hope. But if you ever think that you can't mobilise millions of people, you only have to look at the Obama campaign in America, and that word hope is the thing that mobilised millions of people behind his campaign. And we can do that. And we know from the pension strike that we had back in 2011, we recruited thousands of people on the basis they hoped that there was going to be some sort of settlement which would help them on their pensions. So those sort of things work in a massive environment like Obama's, they work in small campaigns as well. But it means we've got to focus on campaigns we can win. So in the brief time allotted to me, what is the possible solutions here? Well, I'm going to throw a few out there. Firstly, the whole of the public sector and the vast majority of the private sector faces an effective pay freeze and an intention from this government to try and reduce the wages of the UK labour market. That's what they're doing at the moment, quite clearly. So what do we need? We need a Britain needs a pay rise campaign and strike, where we actually mobilise public and private sector workers together to try and ensure that we can change that. That is something which has to be an ambition so that we can try and change the narrative on pay. Because at the moment, even with a change of government, all the government appears to be committed to a 2015-16 pay freeze. So that's one thing we could look at. Secondly, direct a new union movement, organising the unorganised and organising the unemployed. That's a critical part of this. And let's think of some new and radical ways how we can include people in a movement, which doesn't have to be a membership where we've got recognition. It can be looking at some of the models they've used in America, where they've been organising people in fast food outlets all across the states. They haven't worried about recognition. They haven't worried about the formalised structures of unions. They've been saying we need to mobilise people against what the government's doing. So that's another thing that we need to do. This is very much about communities as well, and the link between unions and communities has not been something that unions have focused on for years, and now they are, and now we need to, because that is a critical thing. If you work in the public sector, you need to work with the users of services as well. So if you're going to win anything, it's absolutely critical to do that. And frankly, unless you've got that bit of leverage, which occasionally crops up in certain places, you can't win anything unless you've got public opinion on hand. The Lewisham Hospital campaign, things like that show us what unions and communities acting together can really do. We need to find using real leverage and ruthlessly exploit them. Don't be scared about the consequences, don't be scared about what public opinion. Because if people see unions winning, that will change the game completely. Communications, we need to communicate in a way that people can understand and inspires them to get involved in our campaigns. That's within unions and outside unions as well. And that's really important, that we actually frame things in that way, in a way which builds hope and builds things people can campaign around. And secondly, we need to use technology in a way which we can mobilise people, and there's fantastic technology available for people to mobilise around. And again, if you look at the examples of the US elections, they have fantastic technology they use, and we're just at the starting gate in the UK, really. Political leverage will become increasingly the issue over the next 18 months as we move towards the election. And so that's another thing we need to do, because we need to challenge the whole austerity picture, not just be worried about sort of some marginal issues about Labour. and just change which is leading me on to the People's Assembly, eventually, which is, I think, a critical sort of mobilising force to enable us to change the dialogue in this country and the narrative. And that's critically important. So unions' relationship with the People's Assembly, within communities, build something real that we can use to win. So we can win. We need to understand what we're up against. That's critical. So we need to understand the forces that are raged against us. We need to understand the choices that we need to make in those circumstances. And the old choices have gone. We need new choices, radical solutions that build communities and unions together to work together and to try and give us a chance of winning. We need to give people hope and hope that we can win. And we need to do that by winning, picking our battles and winning on those. And we need to build a new union based on mobilising members. That's the real choice. Building alliances, building a movement for the future. So, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.